What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Welcome back to the Respawn weekly series where I answer your questions. Let's get started. First up, do you think they should remove turrets since they're just aimbots that deal damage for you? That is a very good topic, I think, because if Blizzard is trying to make Overwatch more competitive, I mean, after all, they have a $1 billion Overwatch League, then it would make sense to have everything based on player skill. Now, you can make arguments that certain characters require more skill than others, and that would be absolutely true. But the thing is, even if you're playing someone like Brigitte, you still need to be in the correct position. You still need to look at the enemy, you still need to press the button in order to attack. Doesn't require a whole lot of effort, but it's still there. However, if you just drop a turret on the ground, then it automatically targets and starts hitting stuff for you. You can go and take a nap or have a sandwich or something, and the turret is still going to deal damage. So this definitely is a valid point that stuff like that shouldn't be in a fully competitive game. However, I don't think that Blizzard is ever going to remove that sort of stuff from the game. There is always going to be a casual element to Overwatch, and they're just not going to remove it. Plus, it would alter the character of Torbjorn way too much. It would also alter Symmetra if you got rid of her mini sentries, and even Bob that Ashe uses is, basically just a giant auto-aim turret is what Bob is, right? So I don't think that they're going to ever remove it from the game. However, I do think that Blizzard should always try to diminish the effectiveness of stuff like that. Put more reliance on the player skill and the player aiming and the player being in the correct position, as opposed to just having some constructible object that's able to attack for you. Next up, would a DPS with a sword slashing primary attack work? No, I don't think so, and Blizzard didn't think so either. One of the earliest versions of Genji actually had his sword as his primary attack, and they found that it was way too strong to have a DPS with a melee weapon because he could just get in really close, and he could dance around you and just constantly hit you, and it was very difficult for any of the hit scan and the projectile characters to be able to counter any of that. Now, I know some of you might immediately be thinking, well, what about Brig? What about Reinhardt? They don't have a damage per second that's anywhere close to true DPS characters. Brigitte only does 35 per hit, her DPS is only 58. With Reinhardt, his damage is 75 with a DPS of 83. Most of the DPS in the game have 100, 120, 130, sometimes even higher for their DPS. So, for example, most DPS are going to have double or possibly even close to triple what Brigitte can do potentially for DPS. So imagine you have a DPS hero that is capable of doing 150 per second, and it's really difficult to avoid him, right? Like, that's why it's so difficult to kind of balance the melee characters, and that's why they're usually just going to be either tank or support, because those characters are not 100% focused on just dealing damage. They're also focused on doing other stuff. They have to provide other utility, whether it's, blocking for their team or healing their team and that sort of stuff. So that is why the melee DPS just doesn't really work in Overwatch. Next up, a bunch of people asked this one: could an ability that warps vision work? The example that's almost always included is the flashbang from CSGO. I do not think that this would work in Overwatch for one very big reason. In CSGO, it is a consumable item. You only have one or two in a round, and sometimes you don't even have any, and once you throw it, that's it, right? It's gone. But in Overwatch, it's on a cooldown. You have a regular ability, and you can just use it every single time it's available. Imagine your team having your entire screen turn white once every 12 seconds or once every 15 seconds. That would be unbelievably frustrating. Even if it's like a small area effect, it would still be really, really aggravating to have that happen so often. So I just don't think that those sorts of things would be a good fit for Overwatch. Next up, Lucio can boost speed. Could a hero that boosts jump height be reasonable? It depends on how you're talking about it. Obviously, there are other characters like Baptiste and Winston who already have jump boost type stuff. But if you're talking about a support character that provides like an aura that has a jump boost, no, that would be worthless. You would never want to have anything like that. I mean, it's just not necessary. There isn't enough stuff in the game where it would actually be useful. However, you could have something, if you're a support character, maybe you put some sort of targeted buff on a teammate, and it does a couple of different things, like maybe it increases their speed and it gives them a jump boost. Like, you could do that, or, you know, it could have a variety of different things. But if you're only providing jump boost to a teammate, no, it's garbage. It's a waste of an ability, and it wouldn't be worth using. Next up, what is considered a good KD ratio? In the most simplest idea, it's whatever puts your team at an advantage. And you don't want to look at it as a per match thing or even a per round. You want to look at it per fight, because you could get eliminations after the fight is over, but it doesn't change the outcome because your team already won the fight, you already have the point, or you already defended it or whatever. So it doesn't change anything, right? So even though your per match KD is going up, it didn't have any effect on the fight itself, and it didn't have any effect on whether you won or lost. So look at it more on a per fight, and really it just boils down to, again, putting your team at an advantage. Obviously, if you have 0 and 1, that's bad because now your team is 5 versus 6. If it's a 1-for-1 trade, that isn't always bad, and it's not always good. There are some circumstances where it could be either, depending on which character gets taken out, whether their character was more valuable than whatever you are playing and that sort of deal. But a lot of times, 1-for-1s just kind of even out. So really, anytime you're able to get 2-for-1, you're going to have a pretty good KD. And again, look at it in the per fight basis. If you can take out both of their supports in exchange for just you, that is huge. That is great. So again, don't look at it on a per match basis. Try to keep more of a smaller per fight basis. Do you think that the zero gravity gimmick is something that Horizon could use for the entirety of Point A? I don't think that would be a good idea. I don't think that the attacking team would ever capture that point ever again, because certain characters on defense, like Widow and Hanzo and other long-range heroes, would have such a massive advantage. Once a character is thrown up into the air, although there's no air on the moon. I mean, I guess there's air in the Hab. Whatever, you guys know what I mean. So once a character is thrown up into the air, they are put on this very slow arc. And that is so incredibly easy for an enemy Widow who's defending to just pick you out of the air. Like, there's nothing you can do, really, right? And you might think, well, just don't jump. But there are other things like Junkrat or Pharah, and they can just launch you into the air. Or even you could have a Hammond on defense, and he can just pile drive and throw everybody up in the air. And when that happens, you're just going to kind of float up there, and you can't do anything. And then the defending Widow is just going to get that critical and just take you out. Like, it's so easy. So I don't think that having the low grab for the entirety of Point A is a good idea. However, I do think that there are better ways that they can use the low grab. And here's the thing, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm working on a rework for Horizon Lunar Colony, and I think I'm actually going to try to stream it because I'm rebuilding it using an actual map editor. And I'm going to try to fix all the problems. And one of the things that I want to solve is having the low grab area actually be useful. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be streaming it here on YouTube. I may even start later on today. Next up, does it matter which direction Torb's turret is facing, since it will spin to attack whatever enemies? Yes, it does matter because of that spinning. There's a short kind of warm-up phase when the turret has to turn to actually face the target that it wants to go at. And because of this, if a Sombra sneaks up on a turret from behind, you can hack the turret before it actually turns all the way around and starts attacking you. If you're playing another character like Soldier or Hanzo, whoever, and you're attacking from behind, you can kind of poke out from behind a wall, get off a couple of attacks on the turret, and then hide behind the wall before it ever gets to hit you. And it will turn back to its normal position, and you can just keep poking out back and forth, and you can destroy the turret without it ever able to actually damage you. So there definitely is reason to make sure that the turret is facing in the most optimal direction. Next up, why would Blizzard introduce what is basically developer hero bans instead of player choice hero bans? So just trying to explain it from their point of view, essentially it boils down to, if the players were able to ban the heroes they wanted to, it would always be the same characters. It would always be whatever the strongest thing in the meta happened to be at that time. Or for the lower bracket, it might be whatever character you happen to be most frustrated with at the time. But what would end up happening is, if every match always had Baptiste and Orisa banned out, then you would just have a new kind of meta, assuming that Baptiste and Orisa aren't playable. And you would just then have something else, and that would be the fixed meta for the foreseeable future. Now, what they can do with the developer hero bans is kind of spice it up a little bit more. Like, maybe they ban out Orisa, but they leave in Baptiste. Or maybe they ban out another part of that particular team comp that might be useful or viable, like maybe a Sigma or a Roadhog or whatever they want to ban out in that case, right? So they can force a little bit more variety by having these selective developer bans, as opposed to what would essentially, again, boil down to the same hero bans again and again and again if the players were allowed to use it. So I believe Jeff Kaplan talked about what would be referred to as a hero ban meta, which is just that, where you would essentially have a new meta based on what characters are currently banned. As I've said, ever since the very first time the hero ban stuff came up, which was over a year ago, I just don't think there are enough characters in the game for there to actually be hero bans. And I also think the bigger issue is the lack of hero balance in the game. So that's going to be all the questions for this week. Thank you to everyone who submitted one. Remember, if you want to submit a question for next week's Respawn, you can find it on the community tab of my YouTube channel. I just posted the new card just recently, earlier today, so you can go and leave your comment and your question on that card, and maybe next week you'll get picked. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell to get notified. You can get some cool gear, join my Discord server, or follow me on social media with the links down in the description below. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters, and remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.